Ooh, got it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday for women visionaries in transition who want to cultivate a solid foundation of aligned self-care practices. I am the Change Guide for Growth, and I will help you streamline your journey to authentic expansion, ease, and joy. So we are jumping on for my Women Visionaries in Transition Facebook Live series where I interview the amazing and inspiring impact makers that are in my network to discuss the transitions that have shaped our lives and our businesses. So if you are joining us, please like, share, and comment below to let us know that you're here. And today I am talking to Jessica Pare, who is a Alchemy Learning Solutions consultant. Is that what you consider? Advisor, consultant?
Yeah, sometimes I call myself a learning alchemist because it sounds fun and magical.
I love that. I love that. And I'm so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me about your backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah. So I have always wanted to save the world. I was like that little kid who, gave my leftovers after dinner out with my family to like the person sitting on the sidewalk. And I was an oldest child, people pleaser, did a lot of volunteering in high school and college. I was super idealistic. And I majored in sociology, and I loved it because I felt like I was learning like what was behind the curtain of the world and like why things were the way they were. And I just wanted to solve all the problems. And so I went into a career in education and nonprofit, and I've really focused on like diversity and equity and helping people who face systemic oppression access more resources and opportunities. And I got to work in an urban high school in Richmond, Virginia, and help students plan for their future, which like put me face to face with the problems that we've built into our structures. And eventually I burned out, from the trauma in the community and the weight of the oppression, but also like just my own perfectionism forcing me to like sacrifice my self-care. Self-care was non-existent. That was not a concept I was familiar with at the time. So yeah, that was, when was that? That was 4 years ago now. Burnt out. I washed my hands and was like, all right, this is not working. I need to figure out something different. And I took a couple of years off I took a couple years to figure out who I was and what kind of life I wanted to live. And a lot of that process involved healing trauma and discovering my values and like believing that I could create the kind of life I wanted to live, that I wasn't a victim. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell.
No, I love that you brought your nonprofit experience into your story because, the phrase overworked, underpaid, like that's the nonprofit experience. And that is how everyone in the nonprofit world becomes burnt out and overwhelmed and exhausted.
Yeah. Well, and, something that really hit me at one point was I realized that I was feeling really guilty that I couldn't pay my bills. And I'd gotten divorced and was like trying to figure out how to support myself as a single woman working in nonprofit. And I was like, what is wrong with me that I can't pay my bills, but I'm working with families who have, 5 kids, single mom, like very low education, and like she's making it work. So like, who am I to, and I was like, wait a minute, this is so messed up. Like, that's not the bar. And so then like claiming, it's okay for me to prioritize my own financial well-being and health. And that's what led me to start my business.
I mean, it's all a choice at the end of the day. Like, we really don't realize the incremental choices that we make in our paths along the way. Like, I say that a lot about choosing to commute. That's a choice. Like a lot of people feel like it's a given, like you have to commute, like it's just part of working. And I'm like, no, it's not. You don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like stepping into our own power that we can decide. And if something's not working, we can adjust it.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, the choices may be between a rock and a hard place sometimes,
Yeah.
but you still get to choose.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an example of that. Before I started my business, I was working on figuring out what was next in my career. And I was working with a shaman actually. And she said to me, when you think about making more money, like what's the first thing that comes to mind? And I was like, I don't deserve to make money when there are people suffering in the world. And it came out of my mouth and I was like, oh, like that, I don't want to believe that. That's terrible because there will always be people suffering in the world. That's completely outside my control. And so then I was in this place of like victimhood for a little while, of like self-blame and blame of my parents. Like, why did no one ever teach me how to do this, how to budget, how to, and I was like, wait a minute, is this serving me? Yeah. No, it's actually not. Like it lets me, wash my hands of taking responsibility for changing things, but it's not getting me to where I want to be ultimately.
Yeah, I came across the phrase aggressive victimology the other day, and I was like, oh, that hurts. Oh, I was like, no, don't give me that vernacular. Don't make me think about that. Because I played that role for so many years, the aggressive victim. I was like, everyone else is to blame, the systems are to blame, the man is to blame, whoever I wanted to blame about it. I was like, it's all your fault.
Yeah. And that does serve us in a way. It allows us to be on our high horse and feel better about ourselves, or to, abdicate responsibility or whatever. Yeah. There's some function that it's serving, but it's not getting us to the life we want.
Exactly. Yeah. So what kind of transitions have shaped your journey in life or business?
Yeah, I think I alluded to divorce. That was a big one. Okay. I got married when I was 23 and was married until I was 31. So my entire adult life, I was, with this person, and so divorce, thrust me into like, okay, who actually am I as an individual adult? I lived on my own for the first time. So, figuring out what do I like? What don't I like? How do I want to spend my time? So that was huge. And then the other huge transition was this decision to leave that toxic, nonprofit job. And that was a big one because I was leaving without a plan of where to go. So I, for the first time ever, let myself be in the unknown and let that be okay.
Yeah, that is a scary place to be in sometimes. Like I had that moment at the end of 2013 when I was coming out of an internship and trying to go into the real world, like the real job world. And I had no plans. I like fell off a cliff. I was like, I have nothing planned. I don't know where I'm going and this sucks.
Yeah. I mean, so like I knew that I needed to be done with this job and I needed it to be done soon. But I was so not ready to jump into another nonprofit job. And luckily I found this coach that I started working with, and she helped me see that there was another option, that I could take some time. And, so she helped me figure out all the logistical questions of like, well, what would that look like? And how would I do it? And do I have the money? And da, da, da. Yeah. And I ended up selling my car, packing up all my stuff in a U-Haul, giving my cat to a friend, and like calling my parents and was like, hey, I'm going to put my stuff in your basement and go off to Europe for a couple months.
Oh.
cool. Like, I'll be there next week. And they were like, what?
Bye.
Yeah. And, I was like 31 years old, like, or no, how old was I? I was like 33. Never expected to like be back with my parents again. Yeah, so I had a great summer with them and trained to hike the Camino de Santiago while I was there. And so I figured, all right, I'm going to spend 3 months hiking across northern Spain on this pilgrimage. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to find my purpose. I'll figure it all out on the way. Right? Sounds so dreamy.
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth when you said pilgrimage, because
Oh, yeah.
pilgrimages are so vital for these transitional periods. Like whether you're flying somewhere, whether you're walking somewhere, whether you're just mentally traveling somewhere or emotionally traveling somewhere, like it puts it into a tangible journey of like, I started at this place and now I'm at this place, but what matters is the journey in between and how you experience that time. And that is such a huge ritualistic practice that we've been using for millennia as humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a great plan. And I flew to France and was like, all right, I'm going to spend a month working on some organic farms. I was doing woofing. So for those that don't know, it's worldwide opportunities on organic farms. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to kind of de-stress, detox, like get in the zone and, get closer to like living on the land. And then I'll hike this pilgrimage. And my first week on the farm, I tore my calf muscle. Yeah. Yeah. And so like, I still was like, all right, this is going to happen. Like, I'm going to rest it. It'll be fine. Like, I'll just heal. I'll take, I've got 3 more weeks before I'm supposed to start. Yeah, no, the universe had other ideas. So eventually after 4 weeks in France, I came to grips with the fact that my leg was not going to be in any shape for me to hike 500 miles. And I broke down grieving like the loss of that dream. I was like, okay, world, like universe, what the hell? And I flew home and now I'm like at my parents' house, no job, no car, like a bum leg, no idea what I'm supposed to do. And that's when I started healing, and I found a shamanic healing program that I went into, and that was the beginning of my kind of spiritual journey.
Oh, I love that, because it never turns out the way that we're thinking it's going to turn out.
Yeah, the universe was like, no, you need to sit your butt down and do this work. Like, don't go traipsing all over Europe.
Yeah. I mean, the best laid plans, right? Of mice and men, like it never goes according to plan, but you always end up where you're supposed to end up anyway.
Totally.
Yeah. What lessons did you learn during this process?
So many. Yeah, I think really what's serving me still now is grounding in my spiritual practices to keep my cup filled. Because as a business owner now, I am my product and I am my boss, and like I am the one delegating to me and deciding when my day is over and what's enough. And there's a lot in there as a recovering perfectionist and people pleaser that, I can push myself to extremes, and I can focus more on what I'm doing wrong or what's not done yet, what the pieces of my business that aren't in place yet, than looking at all the things that I have done, all the like how far I've come since I started. So, I lean on my spiritual practices. I celebrate my progress. So I have time set aside every month to focus on what I achieved that month. And when I say achieve, I don't mean necessarily from like an external measuring stick, but like did I show up the way I wanted to show up? How was my presence that month? That kind of thing. And then also trying to set more realistic expectations. That's one that I'm really still working on, because I have big vision and I like it to happen now. So yeah. And then the other big one that just keeps getting reinforced for me is I have this tendency to want to like find an expert, a coach, a guide, a mentor who will tell me exactly what to do. And then I'll do it the best I can. My little A+ student will work our butt off. And like, I hope that it's just gonna all work out. And then it doesn't, because they're not the expert of my life. I'm the expert of my life.
Yes.
Yeah. So just that continual process of like grounding in my own power, my own wisdom, my own inner knowing again and again.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure that resonated with a lot of people in my audience. Like I've been hearing that kind of conversation go around a lot lately, is like, I just want to be the perfect student. I want to get the gold star. I want to get the validation, the, mirroring back that I am valuable, when really it's an internal game. It's totally internal. And like, it's such a double-edged sword sometimes, because you're like, please like me, please accept me, please value me. But it's got to start in here. It's got to start in here.
Yeah. And I guess, something else too, it has felt like there is a disconnect sometimes between how people see me, and how I feel about myself. And, I get a lot of feedback that like, I'm inspired by you. You're so inspiring. And I'm like, if you only knew, like, if you only saw my bank account, if you saw me like on the couch on Monday, like literally this week, I had no energy. I don't know what it was like a universe, like they hit me in the head, I needed the day off. So it's that kind of feeling of like incongruence, but allowing, like, it's okay for people to be inspired.
Totally.
And it doesn't mean that I'm an imposter, because we all have these moments of exhaustion or depletion or
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is actually from improv practices, yes and. Because we're allowed to hold both of these potentially conflicting states of being, states of feeling. And that's actually something that I've been working with my therapist currently a lot with lately, is like, how do I hold both at the same time and honor both, leave space for both, and be okay that they're just different, and that's all right. Yeah, I mean, it's a practice. You have to practice that muscle and grow that muscle over time, because you can't, impatience is my Achilles heel too, because I want it to happen now. I want it, like, I can see it, I can feel it, I can taste it, but the universe has its own plans too at the end of the day. And you just have to be comfortable in that uncertainty, in that tension, in that liminal space that I work with all the time. I mean, my work is my work, like, it's the work that I've had to do myself. And that's why we're liminal beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, I forget who it was, a teacher and mentor, somebody on a podcast said recently, what if we could value or appreciate the desire for the thing that we want? So like, yes, we want that future state that's different, but can we just appreciate being in the feeling of desire without making it mean that something's wrong with right now?
I love that. And like the whole tension between like want and desire too, because want has a little bit of lack flavor to it, but desire has so much more like fertile potential energy to it. So like, just those slight differences make all the world of difference at the end of the day. Yeah. So what kind of tools or practices do you use specifically for mental, emotional, spiritual, physical support?
Yeah. I'm not good with like routine or rigidity.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I have kind of a menu of
Mm,
things, and I just pick and choose what I like depending on the day.
mm,
So I have tried to have like a morning routine, and I do this, I do yoga and stretching, and then I do meditation, and I do morning pages and write in my journal. I set my intention, and I eat a healthy breakfast. I drink a glass of water, like, and I set myself up for failure when I do that because that's not how I operate. So, um, yeah, all of those things I just listed. The one key thing that I do try to stick with every day in the morning is meditation.
mm,
Even if it's just for 5 or 10 minutes,
mm,
it really changes the quality of my day.
mm,
Um, Also, I've found like when I get into a low and I can tell that, I'm in a feeling of lack, or I'm in a feeling of fear. I've lost my sense of faith that it's all going to work out, or I'm going to figure it out, or the universe has my back. When I've lost that, I channel, I link up with Abraham Hicks, and I start
yeah.
listening to like all of their stuff,
Yeah.
because it helps remind me that that everything I want is already here. I
Mm,
just need to release the blockages that I have to receiving it.
mm.
So yeah, that, and then, going out for walks, trying to look for what I can be grateful for every day. Um, those are some of my favorites.
Yeah, I was just talking yesterday with someone else about how I have a routine when I take my dog out for her midday pee break. I say hello to my favorite trees.
Yes.
I'm just like, hello, trees. Like, we have beautiful, amazing evergreen pines, in the Seattle area. And there's these two just very magnificent, majestic, awe-inspiring pines that are in my neighbor's yards. Like, one's across the street, one's to the east of me or west of me. And I don't know what makes me like those trees so much, but I just say hello to them. And then lately we've been getting a lot of spring shoots, like with bulb flowers that are now coming out of the ground. And every
Nice.
day they're just like a little bit taller. And every day I'm like, you're doing such a good job, guys. Look at you grow. And it's just like checking in with the natural rhythms and intentionally making time for these. They're almost like reference points too at the end of the day. Like, time is moving, time is changing. There's things that are staying the same, like the pine trees, they've gotten to a certain height. They're not getting any bigger at this point, but those kind of, I love how you said menu of options too, because you can go based on what you need for that day. It doesn't have to like lock you into a certain form or format every single time.
Yeah. And, if any of your audience is like me and has this kind of tendency toward perfectionism or all or nothing, black or white thinking, like it can actually be detrimental to have this notion of like the right way to do it, the right way to do self-care. Because then we beat ourselves up for not achieving that, right? So there was something I wanted to say about nature. Just how amazing it is at connecting us with a sense of wonder,
Yeah.
And if you think about like the kind of scale of emotions,
Mm.
like shame and whatnot down at the bottom, and like bliss at the top, wonder is really close
Totally.
to the top. And so if we can access that, we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations about moss lately, actually. Because I love moss, because if you get like ground level with it, it looks like a tiny forest of trees. And like that completely sparks my sense of wonder. Like, what if I was the size of like a tiny little being so that the moss was trees to me? And like, it just sparks my imagination in ways that, you know, my desk doesn't.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but that's so important to cultivate. And, you know, it might be different for you. It might be music, it might be smells, it might be, you know, connecting with other people, it might be nature, you know, whatever it is for you, just cultivating that and investing time and energy is so important. Well, anything else you want to add before we start wrapping up?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, these are super powerful themes that we're talking about here. And this is exactly why I do this series, because I have these kinds of conversations with people when I'm doing my networking calls. And I'm like, man, more people need to hear this, because it also makes us feel not alone in the struggles that we've had along the way. Like, so many people are going to resonate with your story because I resonate with your story. Like, you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
So audience, I definitely encourage you to as well share your own thoughts and feelings and insights with us and stories, because we'd love to hear how these similar transitions or your own types of transitions have impacted you in your own lives as well. And special thanks to Jessica for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. So as always, I'm looking for more guests. I'm actually booked out to the end of July currently for these slots, but you know, you can always reserve your spot later on and we can fit you in. I'm sure there will be cancellations and upsets along the way, as life does, because nothing ever goes according to plan, as we were talking about. So if you're interested in coming on and sharing your own perspectives, please reach out to me. I'll send you the sign up link, and I can't wait to chat with you all. So in the meantime, please comment, like, and subscribe if you're on YouTube, share if you're on Facebook, and check out Linktree/Liminal Clarity for all of my links. And then where can people find you, Jessica?
Yeah, my business website is alchemylearningsolutions.com, or they can connect with me on Facebook at Alchemy Learning Solutions. And I don't know if I said this at the beginning, but my company works with coaches and consultants to help them take what's in their brain, all of their decades of experience and expertise, and turn it into something that can help the masses. So online courses, programs, memberships, that's what I help with.
Yeah, it's amazing work. And I'll make sure to add your links in the YouTube description as well as the Facebook comments to make things easy for people.
Awesome.
So until next time, remember that your authentic self is extraordinary. It is wonderful, and you owe it to yourself to create the elevated life that you know you're capable of. All right. Love you all. Take care. Bye.